We had a bunch of people ask different questions, some topics we didn't get to cover over the time we were here. So we now have the antithesis of last year's CWNE panel. Last year, the opening act was CWNEs. They happened to be the newest ones who had just barely achieved CWNE status. This year, on the opposite end...
We should rephrase that. We didn't just barely achieve status.
An excuse by someone who just barely achieved the status.
It's okay.
He worked really hard. In fact, if any of you working on becoming a CWNE, talk to Blake. The man knows how to put in an application. Fantastic application. If you can follow his lead, go for that. So we have CWNE number 4. CWNE number 10, did I get it right? And 33, and 3. So we're going to ask some questions of this group. They have 2 mics between them. Some of the questions might be a little controversial, but that's okay. I was hoping Devin was here. He was like number 1. We were going to just put him in his own category, but he's not here. So, first question, and any order you want to answer them in. Tell us how you really feel about RRM.
Well, I could be Devin.
You can be Devin. Yes, channel Devin.
It sucks.
Well, it sort of keeps me in a job because every time RRM puts 2 APs on the same channel that are adjacent, I've got a network to go and fix, haven't I? So it's good. So it's good, yeah. No, it sucks.
RRM. So first of all, as it stands right now, it's not working very well. But we have to have it going forward.
Follow Sam's advice, and what are you going to tell him to do with the mic?
Make love to it.
Make love to it. So, can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay. So RRM is a necessary evil. We have to have it because in the future, we just don't have the personnel to be able to manage each and every one of these deployments that are becoming, it's only going to get worse. We need to get some automated help coming in the future. Right now, it's not working. I believe that we need to get more input from the client side. I think that we need to have that.
So my true opinion is that it's a tool. That's the way I've always looked at it. It's a tool. If you're in intense environments, I'm going to still recommend static channel and power settings. I know I'm kind of old school on that. That being said, the algorithms are always getting better. As Devin said, some vendors do it better than others, but the algorithms are getting better. And I know all of us, my company and my competitors, are always trying to improve it. I guess the biggest problem I have with RRM is going back to when it first started. I believe Symbol was the first company that came out with it, and then everybody else tried to copy it, and when it first came out, it just flat out didn't work. It was horrible, and to make it even worse, half the wireless LAN vendors put right on their front web page, no more site surveys, no more design, no more planning. And I think there was literally a 5-year period where we were damaged by that. And now we all know that RRM is a tool, and it's a tool, and that's how it should be viewed, in my opinion.
Thank you for both David and Devin. Both of them work. Okay, next question up. You can talk as long or as little as you want. 2.4 gig, past, present, or future?
I'm going to say it's past and future, but maybe not present. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
I think we'd all like it to be dead, but the true fact of the matter is it's not dead. It's here to stay, I believe, whether it's just here to stay for the Internet of Things, which are all coming out with just 2.4 gig only chipsets on. We still have to design for those devices, and even if we are just putting them in that band, we still need to make sure we've got a network, even if it's an isolated network, to work for those devices. And AX is going to be 2.4 gig as well. So it's not like some people said when ASC came out that the only new developments are going to be in the 5 gig band. That's just not true. So I think it's I think it's going to be around for a while, whether we like it or not.
Well, I mean, we all joke about it, but it's not dead. Obviously, we try to get as many, especially intense clients, try to get them onto 5 gigahertz. Bottom line is, there's still lots of devices that are only 2.4 gigahertz, including a lot of IoT devices and a lot of legacy devices. What's always been frustrating to me is when a customer will upgrade their infrastructure and spend so much money to upgrade it, but then they won't spend the money to upgrade their clients. So 2.4 is here. We still have to deal with it. Hopefully, a lot of the IoT stuff will move to a lower band.
And thank you for, in your presentation, we got everyone to. Did you get everyone to do the pledge?
Oh, yeah, the pledge. We didn't do the pledge, did we?
Yeah.
Should we all do it right now?
Yeah, let's all do the
All right,
pledge.
everybody stand up.
Yeah.
Hold up your right hand. And Keith, do you want to lead the pledge?
Yes. I hereby pledge. To never, ever, buy 2.4 only device again. Thank you.
All right.
Well, it's kind of hard to follow that. 2.4 gigahertz isn't dead. It's still out there. It's still, first of all, 2.4 gigahertz is an ISM band that we happen to use for Wi-Fi. So whether or not we put Wi-Fi on it, it's still going to exist and have other different types of devices, proprietary devices, commercial, anything you can buy at Walmart that has a radio in it. So that's not going to change. IoT devices should go there. I believe that 2.4 gigahertz is amateur hour, and that we should try to get all the devices that can only use that and have very, very low user expectations, put them in the 2.4 gigahertz, and devices and applications and users who have expectations, move those into the 5 gigahertz where we actually have more channels that we can do a better job designing when we're allowed to, and get better performance, happier end users. Devin said users are king, end user experience is king, and that's true, and you can't achieve that on 2.4.
Very good. That's like you, I like to simplify, 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 and the easy answer is the only thing that should be in 2.4 are things that can't do anything else. So if you have a device that's 2.4 only, yeah, of course you have to support it.
Just going on, so BYOD, where there is that potential for that $50 or less ad lift, would you agree with me? We have to. Sure.
Well, it fits that last category.
If it doesn't, because
If it can only do 2.4, you don't have a choice. It has to be 2.4. So, but try to put only things that are 2.4 only in there, because they'll have every device that could do 5, it's not, is causing itself to have less availability, less throughput, and causing someone else harm. Okay, next question. The word survey, what does it mean?
Survey is when two guys go up by the side of the road and one's got a big stake and the other one has a laser level. I think that's what that is.
Okay.
Okay, I've got definite feelings on site surveys and the whole design process. And it begins with, as we all know, getting the user expectations, the user requirements, putting them into some type of list, and then designing a wireless LAN. And that design could include a predictive propagation assessment. I use that word, propagation assessment, rather than predictive site survey. Choose your own word there. But I believe that that's only part of it. We still need to get field data from the location that we're going to go out to. You can call that a site survey. It could be done as AP on a stick. It could be just an RF spectrum and a wall attenuation assessment, whatever you like. But finally, the final validation site survey is when we actually go out and see whether we've achieved the design requirements. And the only way to do that is physically at the location, as far as I know.
Rick, I don't need to have you on this board, because you say exactly what I would have said. Thank you. On to Peter, please.
I completely agree. To me, a site survey is something you do post-installation. Everything else is design.
Thanks. You can use that.
I agree with a lot of what Rick said, but site surveys have evolved over the years. Quite frankly, I think the most important thing is the interview, honestly, is to sit down with the customer and try to figure out what their needs are. And then I'm kind of a big believer in today of the hybrid survey, where you're getting on site initially, doing some spectrum analysis and some attenuation analysis, then doing a predictive modeling, and then the most important thing is the validation.
Very good, thank you. Next question up is, Wave 2, do you recommend it to your customers? And has your attitude changed in the last 3 months? Or 3 days? Go ahead, any of you.
All right, I'll start. It just depends. If you're a customer buying brand new APs and you're upgrading from an 802.11n and you're looking to finally do, or God forbid, BGA, if you're looking to upgrade now, sure, go ahead and upgrade to the Wave 2. Probably what you don't want to tell people is, oh, you had the Wave 1, you got to upgrade to the Wave 2. And believe it or not, I'm sure there will be some shady salespeople that will try to get customers to do that.
Are there other kinds?
You know, I think Chuck said it best, is we're still learning about it, and the multi-user MIMO. He did an absolutely fantastic presentation. I learned a ton, but it's still kind of a brave new world. Regardless, whenever new chipsets come out, they're typically better regardless. So I'm starting to feel more positive, especially after watching Chuck's presentation.
So maybe prior to Chuck's presentation, I would have been probably erring on the side of new installations. I'd probably agree with David, and if you can afford it, go Wave 2. But generally, most installations that I come across, they're normally fairly cost sensitive, and installing a 4 spatial stream device when realistically for many years yet you're not going to have a 4 spatial stream client seems like, when you compare it to a 2 spatial stream AP, maybe half the cost from the same vendor, and it seems like a lot of money
Keep in mind,
to pay.
Not all of them are going to be 4x4x4 APs.
No, they're not. That's true. Sorry, Dave, there's a key mind.
Not all the Wave 2 are 4x4x4.
They're not all 4x4, but a lot of the new Wave 4 APs are coming out are 4x4. So I think you've got to take into account the client population and what they're going to be able to be used for. Obviously, since listening to Chuck's presentation, I think you do have to bear in mind whether, you know, the benefit potentially gained from multi-user MIMO, and that's something I think I've still got to weigh up, really, I would say. So I think it probably does depend, but I would, I think we're not going to see a lot for spatial stream clients. So, but if it was a Wave 2 2x2 AP, then maybe.
So I don't think we have any choice. I think probably the vendors are going to start selling what they're going to sell, and Wave 2 is probably the next latest, greatest thing that gives them more market share, more visibility. But what I took, tell me if I'm right, what I took from Chuck's presentation was that there was no case where they didn't see improvement by using the multi-user MIMO. And I'm a fan in doing anything I can to improve our environment now. I don't think multi-user MIMO gives us the biggest improvement. I think design does. Go back in and design the network in the first place and do it right. I don't care what version you're using, and you'll get better results. But if the people that are buying the equipment are sold on using multi-user MIMO and that improves what we've got out there, I'm all for that.
Great. I think a lot of us looked at that, and it was nice having some actual real MU MIMO data that we've been lacking. And the number they came up with is, it doesn't hurt. It's never going to hurt. But my question, and this is back to Rick, your answer was, well, we don't have a choice. We do have a choice, because right now my question was about what are you recommending to your customers? And today, as Peter said, there's a big price differential, and moving forward, the differential between the top of the line and the next top of the line and down. I mean, we've got some pretty broad gaps today, and I think it's going to get even more in the future. So that's still a decision to make cost-wise. Okay, next question. We love these questions that just are really fun. Like the next question is, define CCI.
Is it dead?
Is it dead? And for CCI, how do you, is a little and okay? Is a lot okay? At what point do you think that we have too much CCI and you would change your design because of CCI? Kind of a big long question. It's all about client co-channel interference, AP co-channel interference. Do you go to the edge of the AP cell or the client cell? How do you think through that? And Rick, you're on this end. You can go ahead and you were bouncing your head, so I know you got a thought.
So this one, again, is close to my heart, and I don't know how many of you saw Chuck started a email thread called CCA Preamble Detect, and in that email, he kind of blew a lot of our minds, mine anyway, in which he said there's no such thing as multiple channels. You got one channel, or you got one device on the channel at a time. And if you have two APs that are on the same channel, it's as if you have one. What he meant by that was that there is nothing in the standard that says that when we do clear channel assessment, if we detect energy above neg 82 dBm, we defer. That's what we've been teaching all these years. It doesn't appear to be true. There is nothing in the standard, there's nothing in the 802.11 state machine that gives us an escape at neg 82. In fact, in my testing on this email thread, I found that if I have APs separated at neg 92 dBm with a client connected to AP1 doing iPerf and another client neg 92 away doing iPerf, I start one up, and when I start the other one, the first one drops by half speed. But I haven't determined if that's caused by collisions or if it's caused by deferring, and either way, now we're talking neg 92 dBm. In my opinion, everything is co-channel interference. If there's two devices transmitting on the same channel at any level, and that's down to the lowest rate that the devices can transmit at, you've got a co-channel interference problem.
And with today's APs, if you look at some of their specs, they're down, 92 is like nothing.
Neg
I mean, they can go
92,
95, 98, 102. So there's some amazing sensitivity.
Okay. My biggest problem with co-channel interference is the term co-channel interference, because it's not interference, as many of you know, it's contention. And the minute you say interference, you are indicating it's a bad thing. And it's something that's going to be destructive to your environment. But given exactly what Rick said, we're given you've got two clients communicating on one AP. They are contending for the medium, so they are causing co-channel interference, if you would want to call it interference. That is just how Wi-Fi works. So the question comes with, if we've got two access points which can hear each other at, it could be, I agree with Rick, it could be even down at minus 90, let's say, dBm. Is that a problem, or is that okay? And I've had a few interesting conversations with a few people this week regarding that question. It very much depends on your view whether that's a problem, and also your network design. But I want to suggest that sometimes, and if you've designed for it, that's okay. Because, okay, they're going to share the channel, but if you've got them far enough apart from one another and they're sharing the channel, but your clients are going to roam, so you can guarantee your clients are going to be close to your AP at each AP. At least when they do get access to the channel, they're operating at a high PHY rate. And if you've designed for that, is that a problem? That's the question I want to throw out there.
Actually, that was the question I was asking, and you just repeated it very nicely. Thank you.
Okay, I'm on a suggestion. It's not necessary.
I also don't like the term. I actually use a term co-channel cooperation, because it's Wi-Fi kind of working the way it's supposed to work. But the problem is it does cause problems. It causes a performance downgrade. because it's all about airtime consumption. And the way we design these days is trying to limit airtime consumption as much as we can. And bottom line is, if you have somebody transmitting and nobody else can transmit, it's consuming the air. And with CCI or CCC or whatever you want to call it, it's just another argument of why you're going to be much better off at 5 gigahertz. It's another, you can't prevent it at 2.4 gigahertz. It's impossible. And we all know that clients cause it too. And with 5 gigahertz at least, especially if you have the DFS channels on, you can cut down on a lot of that medium contention overhead. And it also makes the argument of why you shouldn't put your APs at high power. So it is the way Wi-Fi is supposed to work. Chuck kind of blew our minds back last fall when we all thought neg 82, and now it's worse. But we just have to design as best we can for it and try to cut it down. But it exists, and you have to deal with it.
And one of the reasons we have all these CWNEs up here is because, one, we've been around here for way too long, and yet we don't always agree. I had to take a different tack from David's no high power. I say you use high power until you can't. So if you do have 5 gig and you have an area that there is no co-channel contention, whatever you want, a higher power means higher SNR, which means better MCS, which means clients get off the network faster, which means you can have higher density. So high power and high density go together until you can't. And when you can't, then you have to adjust the power down.
Yeah, I agree with that actually to a large extent. A lot of people when they say reduce the power, you've got to remember you're reducing your phi race when you reduce your power. Just be aware of it.
Okay, next question ties right into that. Transmit power matching, is it religion or truth?
I really don't want to touch this one. It just depends on who you talk to. I have personally seen problems if the client power does not match the AP power. But there are some vendors that argue against that. I'm not going to point anybody out, but I've seen it. I think the mechanisms in place like that where the client automatically matches the power of the AP, like 802.11k type mechanisms, and those are good things. The problem is most clients just don't support it. iOS clients, newer iOS clients do. I think we'll have a much better world if clients supported matching AP power. And that's my opinion. There's a lot of people that disagree with that.
Well, and the question is, even if you start them out with matching power, they have different antennas, different receive sensitivities, and obviously starting different power. So if you move the AP down to match the client and the client moves, you still don't have matching. The perfect world of having matching is a nice nirvana, but I don't know if we can maintain it anywhere. But we have AX on the horizon.
There you go.
Well, the question was if you have multi-user MIMO, it'll match. Single-user MIMO, it doesn't match.
Right.
Because the clients are never exactly at that one point where you have a balanced link.
I'm just going to throw a little curveball out there. I would actually, the precursor to throwing it, so I'm throwing out partly to be a bit controversial, but I do generally agree if the power's matched, it's normally better. However, I remember when I very first started out on my wireless journey, someone, a very good RF engineer said, well, one of the principles of RF is that if I can beam my signal to you, I can also get your signal back. So if you think about why people who build, who are sort of trying to hack networks, build these big high gain antennas, it's so that they can listen to signals from an awful long way away. The other thing I can do for big directional antennas is I can beam a signal a long way. So if you took that principle to its length, you would say that, well, I don't need to match my power because if I'm strong enough power to send my signal to my client, can I not also therefore pull their weak signal back? I've tried to do various tests for this over the year and had very varying results. I've seen times when it does, as David said, it looks good when you match the power, but I've equally seen times where you can build networks quite well when it's not matched. So I'm slightly on the fence.
Don't we love things? Here, I mean, we probably have 50 years of Wi-Fi experience on the table, and we go, depends.
That's a good answer most of the time. That's a good answer for just about every one of these questions. But when it comes to what I've always called power symmetry rather than matching, I think it's, in my opinion, it's only an issue when we reach the lowest basic rate and that the power won't support the lowest basic rate. That's when the devices are no longer able to communicate back. You've got an AP at higher power, client device out at lower power, and we try to troubleshoot a connectivity problem. So we go out to that location, we see that the signal strength coming from the AP is fine. Why can't we connect? Well, we better add, we better make some changes here of some type. So that's when I see the problem. But I also know that the best solution, the best engineering, and it should take care of most of the problems that have been mentioned, is that you match the power of the AP to the maximum power of the weakest client device. And then that should take care of, as long as you design for that in the first place. Here's the problem. The manufacturers won't tell us what the transmit power of our client device is, or it's very difficult to find that information.
Really?
Do you remember the day when we could just go to the client
actually look 'em up,
website
yeah.
and you could say, what's the transmit power, what's the antenna gain, and what's the RSSI values for MCS levels and modulation? And we can't get that anymore. How can we
And they were in a Faraday cage anyway, so how real were
Right,
they?
that's true.
And I've seen in real practice, you go outdoors, you put a big AP, even if it's only 5 meters up, in a downtown environment, you're not going to get 70 meters out, no matter how much power you put on the AP. On the other hand, indoors environment, you can crank the power up to a max, and as long as you have symmetry, if the client device's max is 67 meg, and they don't drop down to 5, then they can maintain a faster data rate. But if you have the power too high, then you're going to have an asymmetric MCS. The problem to figure that out is kind of like what Peter was talking about. It takes lots and lots of live testing, and so where do you start? Low and hope it doesn't have an issue, go high and then tune down. Okay, while we're on these same crazy questions, 20 megahertz, 40 megahertz, or 80 in 5 gig? I didn't even say 160, I'm not going there.
I would say generally 80, no. 40, sometimes. 20, most of the time. Let me give some reasons for what I've just said. I think high density, very high density, I think you're definitely better off going in 20 meg channels. If you have a scenario, and it's a very particular scenario where you have, you're not going to have many clients connecting to the AP, to each AP, and you can design it that way. You can use 40 meg channels, and therefore you'll get a better throughput. Some people argue now that all wireless installs are high density, so if that's the case, you'll be sticking mainly with 20 meg channels. The fact of the matter is, if you take your clients that might connect to, say, a 40 meg channel, let's say you had 50 people connecting to an AP, if you put 25 of those on a separate AP on a separate channel, then there is less contention for that channel. They will perform better even if they're two 20 meg channels and 140. They will just perform better. So I sometimes, in my designs, design 40 meg channels, but it's when there's not going to be too many users per radio contending for that channel. If I've got lots of users per radio, I'm always better off with 20 meg channels.
Okay, I can make this pretty fast. I use 80 megahertz at my house. Devin was right when he said that vendors, by default, use 80 megahertz for marketing reasons. That's a stupid default setting, and there are several vendors that do that, and some of us are working to change that. But that should never be a default setting. 20 megahertz is the way you should go most of the time. Even if you decide to go 40 megahertz, maybe even start with 20 megahertz and then start tweaking it to 40. And if you're doing 40, you need the DFS channels.
So if you have high densities, you've got a lot of APs, lots of users you have to put out there, generally speaking, that'll be the use case. So in that case, you want to have as many channels as you can on the 5 gigahertz. That's the whole reason we go to 5 gigahertz. So 20 megahertz gives us the most on that. However, I'm a big believer in fast speed. So if we've got a client that is data heavy and needs the higher speeds, let's give it to them. This is a tool, it's an option. We're not being forced to use it, and we don't have to use it everywhere. We can put it on in selective areas where it's useful. And one thing we have to keep in mind is when we select a 20-40 megahertz channel, it's still a 20 megahertz channel to begin with. It only becomes 40 when there's a reason to bring up the second leg of the 40. All the management traffic beacons, everything's going out on 20 normally, but when we start to do a heavy data download, we bring up the second 20 megahertz and we use it. That gets us out of what I call getting out of the chair, the musical chair as I call it, getting out of that chair and giving somebody else an opportunity. That can speed things up. With that said, with 802.11ac with 80 megahertz channels, my belief is the mechanism is in there to allow us to use 80 megahertz more efficiently than 40 megahertz, because in 40 megahertz, all we do when we do carrier sense is we do the full carrier sense and deferral on the primary 20, but on the secondary 20, we only do energy detect. So which means that if we detect energy, we stop and wait, and then we immediately transmit after that. There's no back off and deferral, which results in higher collisions. With 80 megahertz, we have ability in there to do the adaptive channel selection. Yeah, and I know there's issues with that, but I think it's a good start. My problem, myself, I don't have a problem sending out RTS, CTS, 17 and 20 byte frames, and finding out which portion of those channels would be available, and then using them because we've cleared them out. It's not going to, my biggest thing is collisions. I want to avoid collisions, and I want to get into the chair and out as fast as possible.
Thank you. In your simplify, my answer used to be 20s and then moved to 40. Lately, I've been seeing in client bases a higher percentage of 40 capable. So now I just say, go to 40 until you can't. And how do you know you can't? Test, validate it. If you, like from Chuck's little discussion, I don't know if everyone saw that email trail, but once you realize co-channel interference is causing way worse problems than we even thought it did, yes, there's a benefit of 40 because you got, well, not quite double, we have less than double capacity, but if you're going to cause a collision, it's not worth it. So. Okay, we're all teachers. We've all been around for a long time. Not terribly controversial, but just an opinion for people who are on the path. TS, yes or no? This is just a thumb. Should they go to CWNA or TS first?
This group?
Anyone. No words, just thumbs. Start with CWNA or start with TS?
Hold the thumbs up.
CWNA.
For a technical person, CWNA.
Okay, good. The reason I just said that is because I saw a little flyer out there that said, be fantastic in your wireless, get a CWNTS. Like, I don't think that's the one that's going to get you to be. If you're a sales guy, yes. Okay, next question, following on the CWNP program. Someone just got their CWNA, they love it, they want to go forward and move forward in their career. What's the next one they should be taking? AP, SP, or DP?
AP.
I used to say SP because it's probably the next easiest one to pass, but I've kind of changed my mind on that, and I've come around to Keith's thinking, and I think Keith recommends AP because it's the hardest one. And if you can learn that one, knock that one out, it'll help you with all quite frankly, all the other ones.
It's also just foundational. The knowledge you're going to learn in AP is foundational to everything wireless is built on, and I just think that's really key, and it will make the others so much easier.
Plus, you read the book.
Plus, I read a book.
AP opens up the whole world for you. You've got to get started with CWNA. You got to learn how to talk the talk. AP lets you walk the walk. You can capture the packets, know what it is they're doing. That and with protocol analysis and spectrum analysis, Wi-Fi is no longer magic, and now it becomes as close to science as we're ever going to get. So I believe in that, with the one exception. Some people come into our community and they're already a security professional, or they're already a design or a troubleshooting. In that case, I would say if you already have a specialty and you're interested in security, then I'd go that route. But generally speaking, I think AP is the next best one to get.
100% AP. Because if you have AP, you can do the others. But if you're into troubleshooting, it's going to help you troubleshoot better than anything else. If you're into design, it's going to help you design better than design. So,
Does anybody here think there should be some other CWNP type certification?
yeah, the question was, is any other CWNP type certification other than the four that are out there? Yell it out.
Site survey.
What?
So the design book is.
Come up. Come up. You're just CWNE, you're just like a young one. Did you go to the Andrew Von Egge School of
Fountain of Youth.
Fountain of Youth?
Hey, come on!
I think site surveying, we say it's only a small part of the design
Okay,
process.
first of all, we don't say site survey. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so besides Keith, some of us that say site survey, or we should be saying design is the major process, site survey is a small part. But I think practically learning site surveying just from a book is difficult. However, I think the design book covers a lot, but I think there's so much more to practically site surveying that something that was more specialised in that, following on from the design book.
Would you say that's post-design or more along the lines, what the people I meet who do a lot of the walking and clicking would be more in the TS level, just how to do the step rather than after design?
I think both. I think there's enough content. I think there's enough.
If you're going to target it, you have to target either to the person who's just walking who doesn't actually understand all the concepts versus the one who understands all the concepts and does a big level design.
Maybe a validation and optimization certification.
Yeah.
You can use that mic too.
Sorry. I'd like to weigh in on that because I think it's very important. I think the design needs to be even more in-depth than it is right now. But I think the part you're talking about isn't being touched at all, and that's deployment. So site survey is only part of deploying, and there's a lot to that. Whether or not it is above or below CWNA, I think is a good discussion to have. I can make a case for how a CWNA would make a better deployment specialist than a non-CWNA, but I could go the other way on that too.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you, Scott. All right, final question. Not all of us have gray hair, Peter, but the rest of us do. How would you recommend anyone who wants to start down this path to become a CWNE find a mentor and maybe some experiences how you've helped mentor others? Obviously, the assumption is you need a mentor, and I'm sure you've been one, so. Oh.
Just in my own case, most of the mentoring I've done has come from students, and I don't really have, other than get-togethers, congregations like this, is about the only time I ever meet anybody outside of the classroom. I have a very narrow life. But so I would say if you are taking classes, or if you're self-study, which is fine too, and you're part of the overall community, use some of the social media capabilities that are out there. There's people that will help.
Rick's on Twitter now.
Thank you. With a lot of help, too.
I would, very like Rick really, a lot of the people I've sort of mentored and helped through and to their CWNE certification have been people who have sat my classes. I always like to think I'm available to people who have been a student of mine, but again, I'm not a prolific tweeter, but I do sometimes, people will tweet things or even send me a direct message, and I'm generally happy to try and mentor people you just need to ask for help really. It's a great community, and in this room are many people who will be willing to and want to help you. So the main thing is don't be scared to ask. Find people out, seek them out, go on Twitter, stalk them, find out a way of contacting them, and ask them, because there's many people who love sharing information and helping you out. So, and yeah, ask someone to be your mentor, and I would have thought most people will probably say yes.
Probably the way I've done it is obviously I try to help a lot of people by my public writing. But that being said, on a more personal level, I just try to encourage people. A lot of people come up to me, ask me questions. I'll be more than happy to try to find the time, especially if you're right in front of me. It's a little harder when I'm traveling and I have 400 emails in my inbox. I want to say, though, that Twitter is a great way, because you just don't get one mentor, you get 100 mentors or more. At my own company, where I work, I have personally encouraged 3 or 4 people to get on the CWNE track, and I'm really, really proud that 2 of them just made it. Ruwan, who's in our Tier 3 support in Australia, and Jonathan Hurt, who is just this top-notch SE that works for us. And a lot of it was encouragement. He did the work. But if he asked me questions and he needed to know, I tried to be there for him. There's a couple of people here in this audience, I won't point them out, James, that have passed all 4 exams, and I'm trying to put a boot and say, come on, let's get that application in. And I just would like to challenge everybody here in the room, because we have a lot of CWNEs, but we also have people that are close. 2 challenges, actually. The first challenge is, for those of you who aren't a CWNE, go for it, okay? It does wonders for your career, and you'll learn more, and you'll become part of an elite community. And number 2, for the CWNEs that are here, there's, I think, close to 30 of us here. I'd like to challenge every one of you to try to, when somebody comes to you, they want some help them out.
Thank you. So,